Some ideas don't truly come to life until you see them in color. Thanks to xTool for making this video possible, and an even bigger thanks to you all, because without you, none of these companies would know who I was in the first place. Everything you just saw was made with a UV printer. These machines apply full color designs directly onto a wide variety of surfaces, curing each layer almost instantly with ultraviolet light to create durable, long-lasting images. The competition in UV printing is heating up, and this is the xTool Omni 01. I've been putting this machine through its paces to find out what it can do, what it probably shouldn't do, some rice, and whether full color printing like this is actually becoming practical for a home workshop. Along the way, I'll show you the print times, ink cost, settings, material preparation, and of course, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But before we dive into all the technical details, let's first see this machine in action and find out what it can really do. I printed on one of these aluminum signs I picked up from Amazon for just around $13. For the first design, I created this vintage style Snack Shack sign. The aluminum blank was slightly longer than the Omni 01's print bed. So after printing, I used metal shears to trim away the unprinted section. Then I mounted it to the little snack shack I built for the kids. Here they can use their allowance to shop for snacks and candy, within moderation of course, after I unlock it with this RFID key. And apparently we're living in the future now because the kids receive their allowance through Venmo and Cash App. Here they can scan these QR codes to pay money back into the Snack Shack fund. Eventually we're hoping the store raises enough money for a lockable beverage cooler with a freezer for ice cream. The possibilities for printing on aluminum are almost endless. Not only can it hold up well outdoors, but the perfectly smooth surface also produces incredibly sharp print quality. Some projects, however, are less about showing off the printer and more about making something useful, like this no diving sign for our pool. The water is only about 45 inches deep, and with the deck built around it, I'm honestly surprised nobody has tried anything too reckless yet. As we head outside to install my new safety sign, please divert your eyes from the 12-foot jousting beam I built across the pool for epic pool battles. Anyway, the sign gives the kids and their friends a clear reminder that diving is not allowed and makes the rule much harder to miss. And honestly, if people in your community knew you could provide custom outdoor signs like this with same-day turnaround, that alone could become a full-time service for someone with a machine like this. Let's look at printing on ceramic magnets. Inside the software, you can choose between fast, standard, and high quality. These settings control the print resolution, or DPI. I used this colorful image of my hairless cat Norman to compare all three settings. xTool told me they are still optimizing print speeds in the software, so the times I show throughout the video may improve as the machine continues to be refined. The fast setting took 2 minutes and 28 seconds. Standard took 2 minutes and 46 seconds. And high quality took 3 minutes and 56 seconds. That makes standard about 11% slower than fast, while high quality was roughly 37% slower. Most of the projects you'll see throughout this video were printed using high quality, so keep that in mind whenever the print times appear on the screen. One thing I found really interesting when comparing these three different prints is how difficult it really is to see the difference. I even tested my son, and between him and I, we both had trouble figuring out which one was which.
This is fine.
Oh, fine is high quality.
Yes.
You got that right? Alright, now you gotta find low quality and medium quality.
Medium.
Fast is low quality. I think that's fine, high quality. Standard! No! Maybe it would make a bigger difference on a larger piece of artwork. But on these little things, I don't think it really makes a difference. When you print all the way to the edge of an object like I did with these magnets, you're going to get some ink overspray. I didn't want that building up on the stock xTool sticky mats, so I bought some black silicone matte material and used the sticky mat protective sheet as a template to cut out my own. You can easily do this with a razor blade, or use a laser to cut one to the exact size and add scored grid lines for lining everything up straight. I actually already designed that exact thing, and I'm gonna make it available for all of you watching this video for free. I'll have the direct download link in the video description for any of you that would like to use it. I'll also have ready-made mats on my Etsy store for anyone who doesn't have a laser that can handle that job. The other advantage of silicone is that the UV ink doesn't bond to it very well at all. To remove the resin, you can flex the mat, wash it with water, or use my favorite method, a lint roller. Using any of these techniques, you can clean it up and get it looking good as new. I've always been intrigued by the Apple logo and some possible connection to the biblical story of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Whether that connection was ever intentional is a completely different question. So I placed my MacBook Pro inside the Omni 01 to see whether I could turn that idea into an actual design. Using the software's advanced editing tools, I isolated specific parts of the design. I selected only the hand and the apple and printed those areas with 3 layers of white so they would stand out and have a little more added depth. I also isolated the snake's eyes and assigned it to the fluorescent red channel, which should allow it to glow under a UV light. It's a small detail, but it demonstrates how much control this software gives you when you're wanting to fine-tune individual parts of an image. Now, if you look really close, this is the first print where I noticed any visible banding. There's actually a feather setting that I was unaware of. If you adjust that, it can reduce the amount of banding that you might get. And just to clarify, I didn't print directly onto my MacBook. I printed onto one of those removable clear protective covers. What really makes UV printers stand out is their ability to build up layers of ink to create physical textures and relief. The Omni 01 can currently produce textures up to 7 millimeters high. That could obviously consume a tremendous amount of ink. So this is something you'll want to use selectively. I wanted to make this Starry Night cat design a little more interesting, so I added approximately 1/16 of an inch. That increased the print time to 43 minutes and 50 seconds, but the added depth gives the artwork a completely different appearance. These other 2 examples used only 0.039 inches of texture, both finished in 32 minutes and 9 seconds. Looking closely at all 3, you can see how much the relief height changes the final result. xTool is also developing a beta feature called Relief Speed Boost. For this test, I used a circular ceramic magnet and set the relief height to 0.064 inches, or approximately 1.63 millimeters. With the normal relief setting, this beetle design was estimated to take 48 minutes and 57 seconds. With Relief Speed Boost turned on, that dropped to just 27 minutes and 35 seconds, reducing the total print time by about 44%. According to the description in the software, it achieves this by lowering the precision of the white ink and adjusting the base layer and curing settings. xTool warns that the print quality may be slightly reduced, but based on what I can see here, the finished result still looks great. Because the Omni 01 uses a moving scanning system rather than a stationary camera, xTool claims the alignment accuracy is extremely precise. Before starting, I made sure to run the machine's calibration. If you're experiencing an alignment issue or you see any other YouTubers with problems, that is one of the first things I would check. For the first initial test, I placed 5 coins on the bed, 1 in each corner and 1 in the center. I scanned them, printed the designs, and then scanned everything again so we could compare the actual prints with the original positions inside the software. Once I removed the digital artwork, you can see just how closely the finished prints match the scan. After zooming in extremely far and using the measurement tool, I found a very slight offset on one of the coins up in the corners of only about 0.2 millimeters. That's actually exactly what they have stated on the specs on their website. That's already impressive. but these coins give the printer maybe a little bit too easy of a challenge. Let's try something smaller. I couldn't find any toothpicks, but I did have some wooden skewers in the kitchen, so I broke off a small piece and placed it on the print bed. I typed out some text, zoomed way in, and positioned it directly along the center of the skewer before sending the print. Afterward, I scanned it again so we could compare the finished result with the original placement inside the software. Once I removed the text, you could see that the actual print landed almost exactly where it was supposed to. For something this narrow, that level of alignment is pretty impressive, but I still wanted to know just how far we could push it. So what was the smallest object I could get my hands on? How about a few grains of uncooked jasmine rice? Typed out some tiny text, and then zoomed way in to position it over each individual grain. Surely this would be too much for the machine, but I sent the print anyways. And somehow that text landed directly on top of every tiny piece of rice. Here you can see the wooden skewer beside all 5 grains of rice, which really puts their size into perspective. Using a digital microscope, we can take a much closer look at the results. Here the text printed on the wooden skewer, and here is a single grain of rice. Now, this might not be the most practical thing I could ever print on, but it does an incredible job of demonstrating just how precise the scanning and alignment system can be. Next, let's test the flexible white ink. I had this canvas bag hanging on my tool wall, and I could never remember what was inside. It turns out it holds my multimeter. So I flattened it as best I could and placed it on the mini bed. The surface was still slightly curved. This will make it a good test for the printer's height tolerance. For the first pass, I printed 1 layer of white, color, and fluorescent ink. A few letters on the lower right side didn't print completely, and the single white layer made everything fairly transparent on this black canvas. Without moving the bag, I ran it again. This time using 6 layers of white, followed by color, and then fluorescent ink. This result looked much better. The lettering printed completely, and the additional white layers made it far brighter and more opaque. Under a UV light, the fluorescent ink really pops. Now I'll always know what's inside, especially if someone decides to throw a rave inside my workshop. Since the print head moves from left to right, I also wanted to see how much the orientation of an object would affect the print time. Most people would probably place their items like this, vertically. But in that orientation, the print time took 5 minutes and 49 seconds. The same magnet printed horizontally on the high quality setting took just 3 minutes and 56 seconds. That's a difference of about 1 minute and 53 seconds. Or about a 32% reduction in print time, simply by placing the item in horizontally. Whenever the shape of your project allows it, orienting it left to right can save a surprising amount of time. Next, I experimented with lenticular printing on these clear sheets. The software makes generating these images surprisingly easy. You can import animated GIFs or photos or create something using a text prompt. Actually, printing them takes more practice. After plenty of experimenting, I found that the sheet needs to be perfectly horizontal.
So this is what happens if you're not perfectly parallel. See, it does this weird diagonal thing.
And the generated image must align with the tiny ridges molded into the plastic. Those tiny lines are difficult to see, so I zoomed way in and lowered the opacity of the image until everything lined up the best I could. You print on the smooth side of the sheet, laying down the color first, and then a layer of white behind it. My results still needed some practice.
It's better. I just still have the ghosting of the 2 images. I think that one's my favorite. That one really works. This is what you get if you line up those lenticular lines very carefully.
But here are a few examples produced on an Omni 01 by someone who really knew what they're doing. I used this music plaque template where you can choose a song, add an inscription, and it automatically generates a QR code linking to the music of your choosing. I printed the design across 2 magnetic acrylic layers, placing some elements on the front and the others on the back to create more depth. I accidentally positioned the pause button incorrectly, but I was able to put the acrylic back onto the machine and scan it, add a few white layers, and print the missing details exactly where it belonged. And I also have the laser file available for these acrylic stands for anyone who would like it. I placed a 16 by 12 inch canvas on the print bed. For the first canvas, I used 1 layer of white and 1 layer of color. That kept the ink usage surprisingly low. Even using xTool's full MSRP ink pricing, the entire print used only about 75 cents worth of ink. The colors came out really vibrant, but the woven texture of the canvas naturally softens some of the smaller details. For my second canvas, I used this photo from a family trip to the Red Rocks in Colorado. This time I used 2 layers of white and 1 layer of color. The image has a strong contrast between the warm colors in the rocks and the cooler colors in the sky and background, making it a good test of the printer's overall color range. Next, let's print on an unfinished wooden panel and take a look at one of my favorite features in xTool Studio, smart masking. After scanning your object, the software can automatically detect its exact outline. This keeps overspray to a minimum, and you can adjust the offset inward or outward depending on how close you want the design to the edge. The software is extremely intuitive, but it also gives you some advanced control that I haven't seen implemented this well in any other software. I wasn't sure how many white layers unfinished wood would need, so I started with 6, the amount recommended for my other UV printer. That was probably more than necessary, because the Omni 01's white ink lays down much more solidly. The correct number will depend on whether you want an opaque background or some of the natural wood grain showing through. 6 layers increased the print time and ink cost, but the finished results still looked excellent. And because the wooden surface is relatively smooth and flat, you can really see the resolution this printer is capable of. Now that we have images printed on canvas and wood, we can compare the two and see how much the material changes the final result. The smoother wooden panel gives us a sharper, more detailed print with stronger colors. The texture of the canvas produces a softer, more traditional painted appearance. Neither one is necessarily better. It really comes down to the look you're trying to achieve. Next, I tested printing on a few cork coasters. For my logo, I printed one version with a single layer of color and another with 2 layers, so we can compare the difference. Cork is fairly absorbent, so with only 1 color layer, the design looks slightly more muted. For this mountain range design, I used 3 layers of white underneath 1 layer of color. Those white bases help keep the cork from dulling the image and gave the final print a much brighter, cleaner appearance. I think one of my favorite combinations now is using a UV printer alongside a 3D printer. For this project, I created a flat PETG keychain blank. I gave my 3D printing software a photo of our dog, and it generated this cute little 3D model. I took a screenshot of the design, brought it into xTool Studio, and used smart masking to line it up with the printed blank. The image printed directly onto the PETG, and after adding the keychain hardware, the finished result came together really well. You can still see a few layer lines in the surface. If I made more of these, I would invert the model so the printable face sits against a smooth build plate. That would give me a completely flat surface and an even cleaner UV print. Combining these two machines opens up almost an endless number of possibilities for creating custom products from scratch. And as you can see, I didn't need a laser to cut out this shape. I could generate it perfectly with just a 3D printer. I have these Lego style minifigs, and I thought it would be kind of cool to try to print on them. I gave the software a photo of myself and asked it to generate a Lego style version. The front printed surprisingly well considering how curved the surface is, although the lower legs had a few incomplete areas. The back printed even better because most of that surface is completely flat. I then disassembled the figure, removed the arms, and tried printing the side profiles. The side details came out well, but I learned that the order of operations is extremely important. Printing the sides after the front caused some of the new ink to overlap the design I had already finished on the front. After plenty of back and forth printing the parts individually and in the correct order, I ended up with a decent full wrapped minifig. It wasn't perfect, but with a black pen, I was able to fill in some spaces, and I'm still pretty happy with the final result. Since the Lego character came out pretty good, that led me to wanting to try to make a Minecraft style figure. I gave xTool Studio a photo of myself, asked it to generate a Minecraft style character template, and then used the cropping tool to separate the artwork into individual body sections. Because every surface is flat, this figure printed much more easily than the Lego figure. I printed each side separately and then assembled everything once everything was finished. This character came out really well, and the articulated joints still work just like they should. Next, I 3D printed these small cubes from white PLA. I started by printing the side texture, then added stop blocks to the print bed so I could rotate each cube while keeping everything in the exact same position. That allowed me to use the process again button and skip repeating the height check and setup each time, making all 4 sides much faster to print. After that, I flipped the cubes over and printed the bottoms. The image I found of the top wasn't quite the right shade of green, but xTool Studio includes extensive image adjustments. I changed the tint, warmth, saturation, and brightness until it matched the grass on the sides. And then I printed the tops. The only issue was a little white overspray hitting the far left and far right cubes. A sacrificial block or some painter's tape at either end would prevent that. For the next blocks, I found a 3D model designed to hold tiny magnets inside the corners. The printer pauses partway through the print, so you can place each magnet before the print continues and seals them inside. Just be careful not to bump them out of position like I did with this one on the bottom right. I had to tape that down so the nozzle wouldn't drag loose filament across the other blocks. Each block prints in 2 halves, and once they're completed, you slide them together for a tight press fit connection. I also like that the magnets stay enclosed inside the block. Even if a small child manages to separate the 2 halves, the magnets would still be much harder to access, which is important because small magnets can be extremely dangerous if swallowed. This time I printed a Minecraft style wood texture on every side. Now the kids have a set of magnetic blocks they can stack, connect, and build with. With all these Minecraft toys, the kids needed somewhere to keep them. So I decided to make a giant block that also doubles as a storage box. This was the perfect opportunity to test out the Omni 01's maximum specified printing height of 150 millimeters. I 3D printed the box at exactly that height, placed it inside the machine, and then printed on all 6 sides. Also, I'm just wondering, there's another 60 millimeters of travel. Why not? I don't understand. Somebody want to tell me why? Theoretically, I think the max distance would be 210 millimeters. Other than one initial scan error, the Omni had no problem printing the full 150 millimeter height. I made one version as a giant grass block using high quality, which took about 10 minutes and 20 seconds per side. For the Minecraft chest, I switched to fast mode, and each side took only 6 minutes and 9 seconds. That is around a 40% reduction in print time. Across all 6 sides, high quality would take approximately 62 minutes. Fast mode reduced that to just under 37 minutes, saving a little over 25 minutes per box. The finished quality still looked great. So for a large project like this, fast mode can save a significant amount of time without sacrificing much quality. Now the kids have somewhere to store their magnetic blocks and custom characters, and hopefully keep them off the floor so I don't end up stepping on one. Now it's time to install the Rotary. What surprised me most is the size of the items this Rotary can hold. It can fit those giant 40-ounce Stanley style tumblers without requiring you to remove the handle. Leaving the handle attached does reduce the printable space, but we'll test that maximum area in a moment. And just watching this thing move is pretty impressive. Once installed, it can automatically level whatever object is being held, and it can also rotate 90 degrees so that it aligns perfectly with the scanner. The machine then creates a full scan inside the software, which means you're not stuck measuring the cup, guessing where the design will land, or accidentally printing over existing branding. You can position the artwork directly over the scanned object and even preview it on a 3D model before sending the print. For my first large tumbler, I wanted to maximize the printable area, so I removed the handle. After taking it off, I carefully bent the small metal mounting tabs down as flat as possible. They still stuck up slightly, limiting the print area a little, but it made for a much larger print area than leaving the handle attached. I filled the available space with cartoon illustrations of my hairless cat Norman and wrapped them around the enormous 40-ounce cup. Once the print was complete, I used pliers to raise the mounting tabs back into position and reattach the handle. Now I have this ridiculously large Norman tumbler covered in tiny versions of him, which feels completely unnecessary, but somehow became my daughter's favorite cup in the house. Here is the maximum print area I was able to use while leaving the handle attached to this 40-ounce tumbler. The available space will vary depending on the size and shape of the handle. The 3D scan detects its actual position and determines how close the print head can safely get without risking a collision. A shorter handle may allow for larger designs than the one shown here. You may have also noticed that one letter in the word repeat didn't print correctly. I'm not completely sure what caused it, but it is another reminder that UV printers aren't always flawless and occasionally will have small hiccups. When printing on glass, you'll want to use a UV adhesion promoter to create a more durable finish. I wiped a thin layer onto the surface and allowed it to dry for at least 6 minutes. Make sure you do this in a well-ventilated area because the odor is extremely strong before it dries. Inside the Rotary settings, the software includes several different object shapes. For this glass, I selected Other Rotational Object because of its rounded edges. A single color layer actually looks pretty interesting on a clear glass because the image remains transparent. For this print, however, I used one layer of color, followed by one layer of white, and then another layer of color. That makes the design visible from both sides, rather than seeing only the white backing from the inside of the glass. Now that it's finished, I'll give it a quick fingernail scratch test and see how well it bonded to this smooth surface.
Feels like it's got a good hold. I'm trying to get my thumb fingernail underneath there. You can hear me scratching. Nothing's coming off. It's a good sign.
For this glass cup, I wanted to try a full wrap design, so I included a complete background instead of leaving the glass exposed. I printed one layer of white followed by one layer of color, giving the artwork a solid, vibrant appearance against the clear glass. The finished wrapped cup came out really well. And here is a close-up look at the seam where the two ends of the background meet. The Rotary can handle plenty of different shapes and sizes. I even printed this design of Freya, our French bulldog, on a tapered cup, and the machine was able to follow the changing diameter without any major issues. I did find one cup style that it would not scan or print on. My best guess is that this raised lip around the rim was the problem. Because the printable surface sits lower than that lip, the print head wouldn't be able to get close enough without risking a collision. So while the Rotary is very versatile, you'll still want to watch for raised edges or other features that sit higher than the area you want to print. Next, I wanted to make some custom soda cans, and this project came with an important lesson. When setting up an object on the Rotary, if it cannot be positioned all the way to the left, you need to select this option inside the software. I missed that step on the first attempt, which threw off the scan alignment and caused part of the design to print directly onto the Rotary. That was completely user error, not a problem with the machine. Because I still didn't understand exactly what was happening, I removed the top of the first can with a can opener and then tried again. That allowed me to position it all the way to the left and print like I did earlier. But the raised silver rim was still printed on even though where I positioned it, it shouldn't have. I think it's because the ink is being shot down to a height that is lower than normal. The ink still adhered and printed surprisingly cleanly across that angled surface. This time, I checked that important setup box and wanted to see whether the Rotary could handle a heavy, unopened can that was still full of liquid. Despite that extra weight, it rotated the can without any trouble. And now I have this collectible can of Norman's Nectar. One important disclaimer: these inks are not intended for food contact surfaces or areas where your mouth may touch. Cans like this should be treated as display pieces only. If there is still a drink inside, pour it directly into a separate cup rather than drinking from the printed can. This was also when I discovered a small storage compartment built into the slide-in support piece that goes on the Rotary. Inside are several extra magnetic grip nubs that attach directly to the Rotary's grabber. They give it a better hold on certain shapes and sizes, especially smooth or heavier objects that may otherwise be difficult to grip securely. I probably could have used these a little earlier, especially on the cans, but now you know they're there before starting your own Rotary projects. I printed on several different phone cases, and each one used a slightly different approach. I arranged the cases together in an attempt to speed up the print job, but it appears the machine processes each one individually rather than printing them all at the same time. In hindsight, arranging them horizontally would have reduced the total print time even more. I also did not use the relief speed boost setting on these either. The finished textures are extremely impressive. It's difficult to really see it through the camera, but once you can actually feel the surface, these effects really come to life. Some of you may remember this license plate I printed with an earlier UV printer about a year ago. It recently developed a few chips, but that happened after going through one of those touchless car washes with those extremely high pressure washers. Overall, I've been impressed with how well it has held up. The colors still look strong, and here is a comparison between the day I printed it and what it looks like now. I didn't use any adhesion promoter or other surface preparations on this acrylic, so the fact that it has lasted this long is actually pretty impressive. I'm gonna replace it with a new design, and this time I'll actually use some adhesion promoter on the acrylic. This year I decided to pick another nostalgic theme and go with a Fallout themed license plate. This design was printed on the back side of the acrylic, so remember to mirror your image horizontally before printing. I printed the color first and then finished with a white layer behind it.
Jeez, that looks so vivid. I'm so excited to put this on my truck. All right, let's go do that.
It was time to remove the old Jurassic Park license plate and install the new one. And this officially starts the next durability test. Check back in about a year and we'll see how this one holds up to sunlight, weather, and the occasional touchless car wash. While I was testing the Omni 01, several paying jobs came in through my Engravings to You Etsy store. So let's look at some real customer projects and see how this machine can be used to actually make some money. This first project was an order for 2 small 4-inch acrylic QR code signs with a printed wood grain background. I started by cutting the blanks from white acrylic using the xTool P3. Then I sanded the printable side with 120 grit. That roughed up surface creates a stronger mechanical bond for the UV ink and helps prevent the design from peeling away later. Both signs printed together in 9 minutes and 52 seconds, and the estimated ink cost was only 43 cents. Once they were finished, added the hardware, sealed everything in a heat shrink bag, packaged the order, and shipped it out. This is a good example of how quickly the machine can turn a simple acrylic blank into a finished product that is ready to sell. Another customer needed some signs for an upcoming convention, and this order gave me an opportunity to experiment with different acrylic finishes. I wanted to create a frosted appearance, so I sanded one side of the clear acrylic and printed the design in reverse directly onto that frosted surface. The finished piece is viewed through the smooth, clear front side. What surprised me was how well the UV ink filled in the sanding marks wherever the design was printed. The frosted texture remained visible around the artwork, while the printed area appeared completely clear. For these additional signs, instead of sanding the surface, I used a UV adhesion promoter to help the ink bond properly. The design I was most curious about used only color ink for the large geometric shape in the background, with no white layer underneath. That allowed the colors to remain transparent, so light could pass through the acrylic. The other sign, I did put down a white layer behind the geometric shapes before adding the color. That made the colors much brighter and more vivid, but removed the transparent stained glass appearance. Here's how both versions look on a light up base. The third customer needed several simple designs for an Airbnb property. One identifies the Tesla charging adapter available for guests, while the other includes a QR code visitors can scan to connect to the Wi-Fi. The final customer job was a little more challenging. I told them the largest square I could do is 13 by 13 inches. That made the alignment extremely tight, and I had to scan it several times to keep the entire design inside the printable area. The print came out great. Even at this size, the estimated ink cost was only about $2.50. The sign is going to a floating sauna on a lake in Washington, where customers can scan the QR code to book a session. They were so pleased with the result that they have already become a repeat customer and plan to use me for additional signs in the future. The Omni 01 also has print then cut with select machines from xTool's P, M, and S series, with F series support planned later for workflows like engraving first and then printing. It also looks like xTool has more multi-machine workflows coming, including options that combine printing with its new embroidery machine. For print and cut, you start a new project, select multi-device mode, and add your artwork, and it creates cut lines inside the same software. For my test, I used these little Norman characters. The Omni 01 printed the artwork and registration marks. Then I moved the material over to my P3. The P3's camera detected those registration marks and automatically aligned the cut lines with the prints. When I zoomed way in with the camera view, the alignment looked slightly off, which had me concerned, but that was only camera distortion. Once I sent the job, every character was cut perfectly along the printed lines like I wanted them. Even after everything I've shown, I've really only scratched the surface of what this machine can do. I don't have every accessory yet, including the roll feeder and the laminator, so I wasn't able to test those workflows myself. When combined, xTool says they can produce up to 49 feet of continuous UV direct-to-film transfers. This is also what they use when you see long prints put on skateboards. This can also create large format canvas artwork and adhesive vinyl, graphics up to 39 feet long. The laminator adds even more possibilities, including gold, silver, and holographic effects on materials up to 7.6 millimeters thick. So there are still several parts of this system I haven't explored yet. Be sure to check xTool's website for a closer look at the additional accessories and everything they can unlock. The colorful projects are obviously the fun part, but if you're seriously considering purchasing a machine like this, there are a few less exciting ownership details you need to understand. The ink cost I've been showing on the screen are based on xTool's current MSRP pricing. That said, keep an eye out for sales and discounts. During the launch period, the ink is available for 30% off, so your actual cost may be lower than the numbers I'm showing here. The software also lets you enter your own ink prices, which makes it easy to track your real production cost. That could be especially useful when pricing products or creating quotes for customers. The pricing has to be entered based on 500 milliliter quantities, so I'll place the math here on the screen for you. Feel free to pause the video, take a screenshot, and you can enter those figures into your own software later on. There are 3 different versions available. I'm using the dual head UV edition, which has 2 print heads. This model supports fluorescent color effects and flexible white ink for printing on both rigid and flexible materials, including leather and canvas. There is also a UV plus DT fabric edition, which is designed to print on rigid materials like wood and acrylic, along with fabrics including cotton and polyester. And the most affordable option is the single UV edition. It is aimed more toward entry-level users and hobbyists, but is still capable of producing most of the projects you'll see throughout this video. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be curious about how much the different cleaning cycles use in ink and how much it'll cost you. I'm going to give you some cost based on using the dual UV model like I have here, so just remember that's 12 channels. If you're using the single head, it would cost about half as much. So a standard cleaning would cost about 58 cents. A deep cleaning would cost about $2.03. The full sleep cycle, which uses about 19.2 milliliters total, would be estimated to use about $2.36. The wake cycle would cost about $3.47. And there's also the pre-print maintenance. No additional cleaning if the next job begins within 60 minutes. After more than 60 minutes, the machine runs a standard cleaning. And there's a lot of other details that I will just have here on the screen if you want to pause the video and you can take a look at it. This is all information that I got directly from my contact at xTool. These newer UV printers need to remain plugged in so their automated maintenance systems can run when needed. That may raise concerns about both power outages and electricity consumption. First, I wanted to find out what would happen during a sudden outage. I know some of you probably want to know what happens when you just straight up unplug the machine or if it loses power. So let's figure it out. We'll go to the home screen here and see if we get any warnings. All right, we're gonna unplug her. And I will leave it unplugged for 1 minute before plugging it back into power, and we'll see what happens. Plugged it back in. It started normally with no warning lights, errors, or any other issues. Once I gave it a few seconds, it was ready to print again. While sitting idle, the machine registered no measurable power usage on this particular power station. That doesn't necessarily mean it consumes absolutely zero electricity, but it may simply be below what this meter can detect. When I wake up the machine, it draws around 25 watts. During printing, it alternates between roughly 60 watts and 120 watts whenever the UV curing light switches on. Averaged together, that comes out to approximately 90 watts while printing. Here in Georgia, residential electricity currently averages around 16 cents per kilowatt hour. At that rate, running the printer costs approximately 1 cent per hour. Even if you operated it for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, the electricity would only cost you around $2.50 per month. I know some people will have questions about odor and VOCs, so I want to share my personal experience after running this machine inside my closed workshop for approximately 2 weeks. Because of the built-in charcoal filtration, the powerful fans, I personally did not notice any strong smell or experience any headaches, dizziness, or other noticeable side effects while using it. That said, everyone's sensitivity is different, and my experience should not be treated as proof that the air is completely free of VOCs. The machine includes an exhaust connection on the back, allowing you to attach an air purifier like the AP2 or vent the exhaust directly outdoors. I also placed an air quality monitor beside the machine. Products like isopropyl alcohol, spray paint, and acetone quickly trigger this meter. But the Omni 01 did not create any noticeable change, even with the external filter disconnected and the doors open. That is encouraging. The general setup is pretty straightforward, but there are a few small details worth pointing out. First, look underneath the machine at the print heads. Mine had plastic protectors installed that needed to be removed before continuing. Both doors are easy to take off. The hinges are magnetic, so the doors simply pull away from the side and are easy to slide back into place when you're ready to put them back on. Initially, you'll connect the machine directly to your computer with a USB-C cable. But once connected, you can set up the Wi-Fi and disconnect the cable and do all printing through Wi-Fi if wanted. Once powered on, the software walks you through firmware updates, calibration, and each setup step and order. So don't feel like you need to memorize everything I'm showing you here. The setup is really easy to follow. For the next part, you'll put on the included gloves before handling any of the ink or maintenance fluids. You'll install the moisturizing liquid cartridges and waste ink cartridge behind one of the magnetic side panels. On the opposite side, you'll install the charcoal filter with the airflow arrow facing upward. The individual ink cartridges install across the upper rear of the machine. My dual head UV model has 10 physical ink cartridges. The number and arrangement will vary depending on which model you purchase. Once every cartridge is installed, the top cover snaps back into place magnetically. It looks like a lot when everything is laid out, but the parts are clearly labeled and the software guides you through the complete process. The most intimidating setup step may be priming the ink lines. but it's actually pretty simple. According to xTool, making this process manual was a deliberate design choice, intended to reduce the ink and cleaning fluid that can be wasted by a fully automatic system. While wearing gloves, insert a clean syringe into the first channel and angle it as shown, and slowly pull back on the plunger until the ink begins flowing through the line. Continue pulling until the air bubbles disappear, then rotate the syringe upright again and remove it quickly. I kept my other hand underneath to catch any small drips. You'll repeat the process for every ink channel using a separate syringe for each color. If the syringe fills with air before the ink appears, remove it, empty the air into a bag, and then reconnect it and try again. Once every line is primed, reinstall the magnetic printhead cover and continue through the remaining software instructions. It may look intimidating the first time you see it, but it really isn't difficult. The Omni 01 handles automatic maintenance while it stays plugged in, but if you are actively using the machine, there is also a simple weekly cleaning routine. You open up the top, jog the printhead over to the left, and clean any residual ink from the maintenance area. You'll also replace the waste ink pad and wipe down the rubber scrapers. Once you are finished, select Marked Clean in the software, and the machine will remind you when it's time to do it again. It also tracks other maintenance tasks. The software currently recommends replacing the ink pad and scraper every 90 days, replacing the air filter after 720 hours of printing, and cleaning the optical path UV lamp every 24 hours of print time. None of this is difficult, but it's part of owning a UV printer. I wanted to show it because I haven't seen many other people discussing the maintenance involved with this machine. After spending the last couple of weeks testing the xTool Omni 01, I think the biggest takeaway is just how many different directions a machine like this can take you. You could use it to personalize products, create signs for local businesses, combine it with a laser or 3D printer, fulfill custom orders, or simply make things for your own family that would be almost impossible to find anywhere else. But owning the machine is only part of it. The real opportunity comes from learning what it does well, understanding its limitations, and finding problems you can solve for other people. Some of the most profitable projects may not be the most complicated or visually impressive. They may simply be a Wi-Fi sign for an Airbnb, a warning sign for a pool, or a QR code display that a local business needs by tomorrow. That is one of the things I love most about tools like this. They give ordinary people access to capabilities that used to require specialized equipment, outside vendors, and much larger investments. The machine won't automatically create a business for you, but paired with creativity, patience, and a willingness to experiment, it can become a powerful tool for turning an idea into something real, and potentially something profitable. So let me know in the comments, what would you print first with a machine like this? And if you already have experience with UV printing, share one piece of advice that could help someone getting started. The advice that was left in the comments on my last video was incredibly helpful, and I'd love to build that same kind of resource here. You can scan the QR code on the screen for more information about the xTool Omni 01, or click the link in the pinned comment or video description. If you feel like this video brought you some value, you can return the favor by subscribing, liking the video, clicking the hype button and notification bell, or probably the most helpful of all, sharing it with someone else who might find it interesting. As always, I'm Chad from Chad's Custom Creations. Be encouraged, stay inspired, and keep on creating.